Hello, good afternoon everyone. I'm Edwina and I head up the Member Services team at Community Housing Cymru. On this webinar as well, you also have Aaron Hill, who is our Head of Policy, and Ian Walters, who's Head of Regulation Strategy and Policy at Welsh Government. You'll know that Welsh Government delivered a briefing last week on regulation, so we thought this would be a good opportunity to put some questions to Ian, who's kindly joined us and will be with us for the next 45 minutes. Really, this is just looking at how the regulator will operate through this period, what the regulation priorities are, and also to pick up some issues on gas safety. So you will have seen that an email was sent to your inbox earlier on today with Welsh Government guidance on gas safety compliance for landlords, which was published this morning. So I'm going to hand over to Ian very shortly, and Aaron will be fielding questions then. If you have any questions, if you can add them to the questions tab, which is in your side toolbar. If you pop any questions there as we go along, Ian will cover them. I think Ian's very keen for this to be a conversation as far as possible, so not to wait till the very end for questions. So if you've got any questions as the webinar goes along, just obviously pop them in there and Aaron will field them. This webinar is being recorded as well, and we will be sharing and circulating the link after the webinar is over, along with any questions. If there are any questions that we don't get to cover during this webinar, Ian said he will cover them off and we'll circulate them tomorrow. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ian and Aaron.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to CHC for asking me to come along and talk about regulation, my favourite subject. Talking about it in a slightly different light, perhaps, to our usual regulatory updates. So what I'm going to do is just try and tell you a little bit about the logic that sits behind the update that we issued last week and how we're going to run the regulatory function over what I hope is going to be a short period of time, but who knows. Hopefully this is going to work, and I've just realised that when I look at things that I need to look at, I'm not going to be able to see Aaron, so I'm going to be clicking in and out, and hopefully I'll pick up the questions as we go along. So let's start really with thinking about actually what are we doing? What's the purpose of kind of looking at what we do in terms of the regulatory function in this period? Well, quite clearly, the world has changed considerably over the last couple of weeks. The challenges of the pandemic are changing, and we think actually, as Welsh Government, as the regulator, that RSLs have got a lot to do just in keeping services running, keeping vital services, emergency repairs, care services, support services running, to safeguard tenants and other service users. And we realised pretty much straight away that actually our focus and our priority needed not to be distracting organisations from being able to concentrate on those services. However, the purpose of regulation still exists. The requirement for regulation still exists. So what we just set out was, okay, so what are the key things that we need to do as regulators here? And we think the first one is to be able to assure ministers that tenants and service users are safe and that their health and safety needs requirements are being met. We also need to be able to assure ministers of the financial resilience and viability of RSLs in what could be challenging times. We also think that we want to use data and information that we have to inform Welsh Government responses and policy to the COVID situation. We need to be able to continue to manage the cases of ongoing regulatory concern, and then in the longer term start kind of thinking about preparing for the new normal, whatever the new normal is. So that was kind of, they were our high-level aims, and then we thought to ourselves, okay, so actually our regulatory focus needs to be on the impact of the coronavirus on RSL operations. And as I said, primarily limited to safety of tenants and service users and ongoing financial resilience and viability. An awful lot of what we were going to do in 2020 is pausing. we're talking about our governance development project is paused. We're talking about some of the other things that we've been working on, pausing, and I think quite rightly. We were due to, or we are due to, review circulars and guidance. There's actually a live consultation at the moment about some guidance on deregistration. That consultation is going to run until the end, but the chances are that people have not responded. They've got other things to think about, and I think quite rightly we'll probably at some stage run that consultation again. We'll see what comes in, but we won't be doing any more reviews of circulars and guidance unless they're related to the crisis situation in the immediate future. We have, or we've had in the diary, a planned review of the regulatory framework for the summer. I think that's probably going to pause. In fact, I'm absolutely certain. Data, publishing data, satisfaction data, and all those things. Well, we are due to publish satisfaction data across local authorities and RSLs for the first time in comparable data in 2021. That's still a fair way away, so we'll see how that kind of goes. But there's an awful lot of the things that we were doing which actually, in the situation we're in, probably aren't so important anymore. So I'm not sure. Any questions so far, Aaron? I'm going to need to come and clicking back to you. No?
No, nothing so far, just administrative ones for us.
Okay, good stuff. So our regulatory focus is on the impact of coronavirus on RSL operations. We're not going to publish any more judgment reports, clap, I think I heard, other than the ones we published due before the end of March, and normal routine regulatory oversight is suspended. And that applies to the assurance plans and all of those things. And actually, people who had their judgments recently will see that we're no longer saying you must provide us with a regulatory assurance plan. We are saying, no, we expect the issues to be progressed, and at some stage you will need to evidence the progress. Case management, excuse me, and oversight of RSLs where we have regulatory concerns will continue. And key to all of this is really effective co-regulation and self-reporting. What we need organisations to do is to take even more responsibility than they have so far in terms of reporting issues. And we set out in the guidance where we expect to be informed about things which are changing in the organisation. We will also work proactively with some RSLs where we think there are potential issues or risks, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a bit. So what are we saying? You must tell us about changes in the way that your business is delivered, material changes. And we expect that RSLs will be making reasoned, rational decisions based on good governance principles when you are making changes to how services are provided. So if you decide, okay, very much the things happening at the moment, we're only going to carry out emergency repairs, that's fine, so long as that decision is made on on the basis of good governance, and it's a rational decision, and there's a risk assessment and all of that sort of thing. And we also expect decisions to be properly communicated to tenants and other stakeholders. So we set out that you must notify regulation of any significant change to service provision, or if you're encountering any difficulties with delivering services because of the pandemic. 9 times out of 10, if you tell us what you've done, why you've done it, we're not going to seek any further details, but we may do if we want some more information. In terms of health and safety, I think it goes without saying that you must notify us of any significant and material compliance risks, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions about compliance coming through as we go through the session. And then the third priority, financial viability. Again, you must notify any difficulties with any aspect of the financial plans, in particular liquidity, covenants compliance, or significant increases in rent arrears, and provide details of mitigations that you're proposing. Now, I think it's reasonable to say we're all expecting difficulties with rent arrears. and rent arrears to change, and we're working as Welsh Government with CHC and with the WLGA on rent and support for tenants with who find themselves in financial difficulty as a result of the virus, and that work will be ongoing for part of our future work programme. So what does that mean in reality for RSLs? Well, I think that what it means is actually everybody needs to be in the mindset that actually regulation is continuing. There still is a continuing oversight, but at a much higher level and focusing on those three areas in the first place. We expect people to contact us as soon as you identify any issues. And then we've set out kind of some changes. I should just go through some of the changes in the team. I'm not sure that people will be aware, but some of our team have been redeployed temporarily into other parts of Welsh Government to work on COVID-related policy development and responses. We're not at a skeleton staff by any means, but what we've done in response to that is said, okay, we haven't got you've no longer got your usual regulation manager. So what we need you to do is, rather than pick up the phone as you normally would, and that is exactly where we wanted to get to with all of this, is that people would pick up the phone and tell us about problems. But because of the way that we have to work at the moment, what we're asking you to do is to email in the first instance to the housing regulation mailbox, and just put whatever the issue is that you want to take that then to the best person in the team to deal with the issue. And we might do a couple of things. We might just send you a routine reply that says, yeah, thanks for telling us, we've noted that and we don't need any more information. Or we might say, actually, we need a little bit more information just to make sure that we've got the assurance that we're happy with the way things are. And essentially, that's the kind of the formal record side of how regulation is going to work over the next however many months it is. We will also be making quite regular and frequent contact by phone with chief executives, chairs perhaps, just to talk through any issues which come up, and just to ask how things are going, and to maintain that relationship which we've been quite careful to work up over the past couple of years. So in essence, things are changing. There's absolutely no doubt about that, but the regulatory kind of oversight still exists. The Minister is very keen that regulatory oversight still exists, but the thrust is changing in many respects in terms of the responsibility of organisations to tell us about material changes to the way they deliver services, health and safety risks, and financial viability. Now, it's very likely that the initial approach that we have will develop over time as well. I can quite easily foresee a situation where we might seek, as they do in England and Scotland, with some of the other UK regulators, we might seek to ask you for standard information on a fairly frequent basis moving forward. We're not sure what that information would be, but it wouldn't be onerous. It would be asking for information which you would be recording, or you would keep anyway, but just to give us some comfort about where people are and to identify primarily any issues which people are facing.
Ian, can I come in there? We've had a couple of questions. One of which is linked to reporting and the information that you expect as a regulator. Helen White from TAP's asking how you would like organisations to report self-report issues. She's touched on that. You've touched on that a little bit, sorry, but do you want that on a case-by-case basis, or is there going to be a set format? And then I've got a couple of questions to follow on health and safety.
Very much on a case-by-case format, and actually, even if you've got a situation that you think actually I'm not sure if I need to talk to the regulator about that, is stick it on an email and somebody will get back to you and just chat it through or tell you that it's okay, kind of thing. You know, we don't need any more information, but very much on a case-by-case basis. So we've had emails from different organisations with single issues. We've also had emails with updates across the three areas of the three priority areas as well. And on those, we've kind of, okay, of the 9 or 10 things that might be on an email, there's one thing that we need a bit more information on. So we'll go back on just that point rather than go back on all of the issues that are raised.
Okay, great, thank you. On health and safety, question from Paul Kennedy at Mellon. In terms of the health and safety work that you're undertaking, are the regulation team in contact with the HSE? And are you taking into account their view? Obviously, a few people on the call will be aware that Welsh Government published guidance this morning, and that we've published our legal advice, which has gone to Chief Executive and will be shared more widely in the next few minutes, actually. But I wonder if you've got anything to add there, Ian.
I've got nothing to add in terms of the detail. What I would say is that from a regulatory point of view, is we will be pragmatic in terms of people's, people achieving full compliance with their statutory responsibilities. In terms of their legal responsibilities, obviously the advice, I think, is probably helped. The advice that the Welsh Government issued this morning, and the UK Government issued similar advice just before the weekend, I think is helpful. I think the CHC advice is probably going to be helpful in terms of people demonstrating how they've attempted and made their best endeavours to meet their statutory responsibilities. But we're not in control of those statutory responsibilities. I understand that there is still lobbying in terms of changing, for example, the gas servicing requirements to an 18-month window, but at the moment the statutory responsibilities remain in place.
Okay, thank you. And just to add for members there, CHC will be writing with both the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations and the National Housing Federation and CIH to the Health and Safety Executive this week to raise those issues that have been raised by Chief Execs and others on some of our regular updates. There are a few other questions, but one more on health and safety I'll pick up before we go back to you, Ian. Dan from CCHA is asking, so I understand material issues, services and financial viability. However, for health and safety, materiality will be specific to each individual compliance area, and this is being led by the Health and Safety Executive, other regulators. There's no one size fits all, so how is the regulator defining materiality?
And again, materiality will be different for each organisation, and I think my advice would be to be cautious in terms of materiality. You would expect me to say that, perhaps. And if you think an issue may be material, let us know, advise us of it, and if we don't consider that it is material, we need further information or something that we want to know more about. But that would be my advice, is to assume things need reporting and or need notification. We need to be notified of things, and if we don't, we don't. I think part of this is a bit of a learning curve as well for us in terms of how we assess the information that comes in. So have you got any more there, Aaron?
Yeah, there's a couple more. Do you want me to pick them up now, or do you want to carry on where you were?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of go through a little bit. We said, largely we're going to be relying on self-reporting, notification of issues which are, considered material and all of that. But we're also going to do some proactive work, and I guess that people will be saying, kind of, so what's the proactive work going to look like? And I think it's fair to say that what we're going through a process of is considering the portfolio of associations and working out a little bit about relative risks in our view of how, risks relative to each association. So we're looking at three things before we ask for more information. So we do our assessment of risk, which is based on the factors which people would imagine: size, complexity, type of business, you know, and all of those things. We're looking then at issues which come up from the self-reporting process, and then we're looking at wider sector issues. And from that, we will ask some organisations for more information or more assurance about different factors. And one of the examples I would give there is, so we would be very, very interested in organisations if they didn't have, you know, if they had low cash reserves perhaps, or if they didn't have at least 12 months kind of funding in place. And we might at that point, and we know that information because we can go to the statutory accounts and the global accounts, and we can go to our regulatory intelligence, and we can look and find out, okay, which organisations fit into those categories. And we might then ask those organisations for some more information around kind of their cash and their funding requirements, which then very quickly probably would be, yeah, we're satisfied with that, we have the assurance we need, and that's put in place kind of thing. So there will be an element of us asking questions, but it's very much focused around our assessment of risk, issues which come from self-reporting, and obviously the wider sector stuff as well.
Ian, that feels like a good time to ask one of the other questions we've had from Paul Roberts. Now, none of us know what the future will bring or the likely impact on issues such as rent arrears. Clearly a lot going on in that space. Housing associations are stress testing financial plans, but on some common assumptions they will breach covenants. Have you gauged the funders' reaction to the moving picture on things like rent arrears and financial resilience?
We've started talking to UK Finance, and we're taking those conversations on. We've also linked into CHC to some extent in terms of kind of possible scenarios and what might happen. And I've also been talking to the other UK regulators today about kind of their scenario planning. And it is very much an emerging picture for us, but I'm programming in some more conversations with UK Finance and then the funders directly. But yeah, it's an emerging picture.
Great, thank you. And there's one more question, slight deviation from where we were, but I think relevant nonetheless. So Alid from ADRA has asked, will the development return deadline be shifted forward to allow RSLs to reflect on the impact of COVID-19, scheme completion timetables, etc.?
Sorry, Aaron, which return?
The development return deadline.
Is that the one for the 9th of April? Sorry to...
Yes, I think it is, yeah. It's the one that I think Alistair's written out about it recently, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, that's one that we would seek people's best endeavours to complete by the 9th of April, if that is at all possible. So yeah, that's the one that actually, the one deadline that we left in. The rest of the deadlines, I think we've kind of said, actually, you know, we're not going to ask you to meet these deadlines. If you want to make the returns by the particular deadlines, you can. But again, I'm expecting that kind of that picture, that situation to change over the coming months as we get used to the new way of working, and perhaps to, you know, working with the sector to impose some other deadlines or some newer deadlines for different pieces of information. But if colleagues can get the development deadline, get the development return done by the 9th of April, that would be very much appreciated.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions for now, so back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, you know, we are very much in an emerging system of regulation. It's very pleasing to note that we have so far had, gosh, just in last week, we've had 35 notifications that people have felt that they needed to tell us. The interesting part of that is actually in terms of follow-up, there aren't that many, but you know, it's important that we continue to receive updates with what people think are interesting. But I think what it says is people are giving us fairly comprehensive information about what the issue is that they're facing, what they've done about it, and how they've assessed the risks, which is why we're not needing to ask for too much more additional information. I think it's probably as much as I can say really in terms of where we are with the system. I mean, people have seen the business continuity update. We'll be issuing further updates as time goes on and as we learn things from the way that we're doing things now. But I think it's safe to say that we're going to be in this situation for a few more months at least. And we will keep everybody advised as we start to learn, as we understand a bit more about what we're doing as regulators. I have to kind of reiterate the message that actually it's better to tell us about something or to drop us an email saying that you want to have a chat about something than think actually we're not interested in it. You know, we're very, very aware of the pressures that are going to come on from lost income, continuing to deliver services. Very, very aware of all of those things, you know, and you need to keep us informed so that we can take the necessary steps from our end.
Lovely, thank you very much, Ian. A final opportunity for a call out for any more questions that might be outstanding. No. I think if you have any or any come to light over the next few hours, if you just send them through to myself or Aaron and we'll put them to Ian to make sure they're included in the questions and answers document, which will be circulated to the sector. Just to say thank you very much for your time. If you go to the website, Coronavirus What You Need to Know, all of the resources, including our consolidated advice, is on there. And we aim to have the recording of the website and the Q&A out as part of the daily email this time tomorrow. So as I said, if you have any questions in the meantime, please do send them through to us. We also have a webinar tomorrow on gas safety, the legal advice which Devonshires have supplied to us. So if you haven't registered for that yet, there's still time to do that. Ian, thank you very much for your time, and we will see you again soon. Thanks very much, everybody.
Cheers.